Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. I'm your host, Pete Pardo. I promise today's going to be the last video. I've had a very, very productive day. Sometimes, especially on the weekends, I get kind of supercharged because I got a lot of things going on. I got albums I want to talk about, catalogs I want to rank, interviews I've set up, all sorts of stuff. And I have been at it all day today, bringing you guys some content. And I got one more thing I want to cover for you today before I sign off till tomorrow, right? Because tomorrow's another day. I've been talking about this one for a while. We actually had Martin Popoff on the show, maybe about 2 months ago, maybe not quite 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, and to talk about his brand new book, his brand new Rush book called Anthem-Rush in the 70s. And this is from ECW Press. So at the time when we had Martin on the show, we actually, he talked about the book itself, but I hadn't read it yet because I actually just got it. So I literally, the day I got it, I got in touch with Martin. I'm like, why don't you come on the show? We'll plug the book so people can order it, all that kind of stuff. But I hadn't had a chance to read it. So I actually just finished it yesterday. Yesterday, the day before, something like that. And I knew this weekend I was going to come and just talk about it and give some kind of opinions on the book. So first of all, if you are a Rush fan, and specifically a fan of the Rush albums in the 70s and the kind of the history of Rush, how they came together as a band. If you have any interest in that aspect of their career, you got to read this book. And it's a tremendously thick book. So we're talking here roughly, like 8-9 years of their existence, right? It's about, all told, about 350 pages, of which some of that is kind of discography and all that kind of stuff. So, 325, 330, something like that, of text. And this covers, the three guys, actually four, because John Rutsey actually plays a big part in the early part of this book. But the early years of them as kids, getting an interest in music, learning to play instruments, meeting each other, forming a band, going out and playing the clubs and the parties and all that kind of stuff, and eventually, getting the record deal. John Rutsey leaving the band due to health reasons and possibly some other reasons. How they found Neil Peart, how that all started that partnership of those three started. And then, of course, each chapter is kind of like an album by album, as Martin generally does on these books. So we've got a large chunk of the book is actually dedicated towards leading up to, the early days, leading up to the first album and Fly By Night. I would say those two albums take up a large chunk of the book. I think for those of you who are really into Hemispheres and Farewell to Kings, less time in this book is spent on those two albums, interestingly enough, although what is said about those albums and the time what the band was going through when they put those albums together. Pretty fascinating storytelling. And I will say this book, a little bit different than Martin's other books, similar type books, whereas there's less analysis of the songs that make up each album from Martin himself as there are in other books. This is more of kind of like a history telling of this band album by album. And there's lots of interview segments from the guys in the band telling the stories, right? So it's a little bit different. So this comes across more of a, this is the decade in the history of Rush, the albums they released and everything that was going on, the tours, the bands they played with, all the stories and, people they met and all that sort of thing. The long months on the road and, the long months in the studio, especially, it was interesting to read how torturous, I don't know if torturous is the right word, but how tough on the guys the whole process of Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres really was on the band. Spending so much time in the studio trying to come up with these albums, the long tours, and how, they really, by the end of that Hemispheres tour, they were ready for the next phase of their career. They wanted to move on to something a little bit different. The big epics and the meticulous time spent in the studio had to change a little bit. So there's more of that than an album by album, song by song analysis, which Martin generally does. But it's a fascinating read because this is basically Rush in the 70s as told by the guys themselves. All right, with Martin's very, very well done guidance here, putting it all together. And like I said, if you love this period in the band, just absolutely fascinating stuff. And of course, there's some cool photographs here, all vintage stuff here. You got the original trio, right, with John and Rutsey. Some cool live shots. All right, not a ton of photographs, but you do have two little sections. Let me get to the other one here. Yeah, here's the cool stuff, right? The double necks are coming out, right? That's so a very, very entertaining read. I mean, this is one, and it's a gorgeous book. It's got the hardback, right? It's kind of raised lettering and all that kind of stuff. Or very, very cool, and. I'm not sure if Martin's still sending these, but you also get a nice bookmark. I'm a sucker for bookmarks. I got a whole collection of them, so this is kind of neat. And Martin, as always, if you order a copy, will autograph it for you, as he did mine. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate the kind words there. So, yeah, if you haven't gotten this already, go out and get it. And as per Martin, his part 2, which is going to be the 80s era, is coming soon. So that's in the works, too. I'm sure that'll be a fascinating read. So that, of course, that's permanent waves all the way through the end of the decade. So that's Presto, correct? It's Presto 89, something like that. So you get the next volume is going to be, obviously, all those albums in between. So Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures, Signals, so on and so forth, out throughout, finishing up the decade. So actually, the 80s, pretty prolific for the band. They released quite a few albums in the 80s. And the 80s, a lot of shifts in style for the band as opposed to this early stuff. So, but if you want the early, heavy rock, it's partially metal at times, progressive metal, progressive rock, all the early proggy stuff, the heavy stuff, that's what this book is all about. As you can see by the picture of the guys, right? Early shot of the band. So go to Martin's website, martinpopoff.com, I believe it is, and you can order a copy directly from Martin. It's called Anthem-Rush in the 70s by Martin Popoff. Check it out. Great job, as always, Martin. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So have a good rest of your Saturday, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Remember, a lot of stuff posted today, so go and check out. We've got a ranking the albums of the Raspberries. We've got an album review of the new Horizont CD, an album review of the new Soft Machine live album. We've got a 2-part interview with U.S. progressive rock veterans Glass Hammer, Steve Babb, and Fred Schendel, the 2 founding members, came on the show. Got a 2-part interview you got to check out here. That was a fascinating discussion. And then, of course, this one. So a lot of content for you today. Enjoy it all. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.